We're officially live on Facebook for the Thursday edition of the Not Your Average Investor Show, the JWB Rental Property of the Week. I'm your host, Pablo Gonzalez. With me as always, the man I like to call GC, because he's got these genius concepts. He knows how to generate cash flow. He's a great co-host, and his name is Gregg Cohen. Say hello, Greg.
Everybody, great to be with you.
And today we got a guest investor, a man who has lived all over the United States, recently exited his company, and now he's living in Marietta, Georgia. Bob Wiesner, a man with a lot of investing background, by the way. Yeah. I didn't mean to cut you off right after I said your name. Bob, welcome.
Hello, good to see you.
That was the old intro, except non-intro. That was a good little pull you pulled out on there.
It's the rope-a-dope.
The rope-a-dope. There you go.
Bob, it's great to have you. We're pumped to get into your story. We got to talk a little bit about it before. Some great nuggets here that we want to dive into. We like to tell everybody the show is presented by JWB. So if you want to talk rental property investing, if you want to talk about the best property management for rental property investors, or if you want to just talk about getting an edge on the real estate market because you're a real estate professional, this is the place to be. If you want to speak directly to our experts, go to chatwithjwb.com, book yourself a call. And right now it is time for Bob. You said you've watched the show. Are you familiar with the roll call?
I am. Yes.
All right. It's because it's time. Roll call. Bill Shields. Feliz jueves, amigos. Very nice, Bill Shields. That's a new one. Yeah. Good to have you, buddy. John Henning, good afternoon. We got Gina G Star is in the house as our community manager today. If you need anything in the chat, reach out to her. Drew Barnhill, who's right down the street from you, Woodstock, Georgia. Anthony Ditta is here from South Florida. Good to see you, Anthony, back. Carl Thompson says, good morning, everybody. Good morning, Carl Thompson. Jen Filzen is in the house, the fairy godmother of the Not Your Average Investor Show community. We got Leo from the West Coast also. He says, good morning, all. We got Madison is in the house. Madison is a team member here at JWB. You're going to see a lot more of her coming up soon in the Facebook group, here in the chat. She is going to be an awesome, awesome member of this team. We got Marilyn Cotterman from Homosassa, Florida. Do you know what that's famous for, Bob?
No idea.
Bob, it's the home of the
manatees.
Home of the manatees.
Yes,
okay. There you go. We got Noah Randari is back. Hello, this is Nora from California. Good to have you, Noah. Dean Curry is checking in, where it is freezing, rain, sleet, and snowing in Columbus, Ohio. We got Greg Stone checking in from New Jersey. We got
Denny Davies coming in from Germany.
Danny Davis. I'll be this in, Denny. Good to have you. Nadeem Shah is back in the house. Howdy, everybody. Good morning and good afternoon. Raj Bantu, I see you, Raj. Good to see you. Oh, Michael Santorios from Northern Virginia. Almost missed him. Let's get into the show. Greg, I heard that there is a little bit breaking news.
There is. It's the best type of breaking news too, because we get to talk about this wonderful golf tournament that JWB Cares is putting on. It's coming up. It's February 28th. So we're in the month of the golf tournament, which is the single best day in JWB every single year. That's where we come together as a community, even beyond our team here, our network, our clients, and we come together to build a brand new construction home. And then we gift that home to a warrior, a wounded warrior here who needs a helping hand for affordable housing. And so all of us together come and do this amazing thing. It certainly is not without the help of incredible companies that step up to sponsor the golf tournament. And we wanted to highlight one of those companies here today. It's our friend at Alden White Contractors. I'm going to read a little bit about Alden White, and I wanted to make sure I reach out to Buck Smoke. Buck Smoke is the Director of Business Development. I believe Buck is in the audience here. So for all of you here in the community, say hello to Buck and tell him how happy we are to have him and Alden White's support here. Alden White focused on Jacksonville for 35 years, been building long-standing relationships throughout Northeast Florida by providing open communication, innovative ideas, and diverse construction solutions using significant expertise in commercial, healthcare, and public sector work. Alden White helps our clients bridge the gap between dreams and realities. This is really cool about Alden White. And I know them personally. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about how JWB works with Alden White, but their company's locally focused philosophy allows their clients to go home at night and has built the foundation for a very strong company culture, resulting in a connected and collaborative family. In 2021, Alden White built over $130 million in projects in Northeast Florida, and together we continue to build a better future for people, clients, and the Jacksonville community. At Alden White, they believe their experience, trust, and transparency are the keys to success, Their team is committed to delivering quality and integrity in everything they do with a focus on project safety that has produced industry-leading results. Their leadership team consists of individuals with extensive construction experience, designations, and knowledge of industry standards, and they are honored to have been recognized for their excellence and craftsmanship. I wanted to talk a little bit about our relationship with Alden White, because many of you have read articles about JWB's investments in downtown Jacksonville, notably the Florida Baptist Convention building and the Federal Reserve, the old Federal Reserve building in downtown. In fact, on our last meetup here in Jacksonville, we toured these buildings and had just this incredible experience getting inside these buildings as they are under construction. And this is part of our commitment to downtown Jacksonville. Well, guess who we're working with to renovate those buildings?
Let me guess. Alden White?
Alden White.
Nailed
We certainly love Alden White. They are absolutely crushing it on these projects. And these are not like renovating like a house. These are $20 million renovation projects. We, of course, wanted to work with the best and that's Alden White. So wanted to say thank you to Buck Smoke, to the entire team at Alden White. Thank you guys for sponsoring JWB Cares and for being a part of such a wonderful community and a wonderful mission here. We appreciate you.
I'm also going to throw it out there. Buck Smoke, you have the coolest name I've ever heard in my life.
Agreed.
Major name envy.
Agreed.
I bet that guy can throw a football over a mountain. All right. Well, enough about Buck. Let's talk about Bob. Bob, you are joining us as the guest investor. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your acumen in investing? What kind of stuff are you involved in? What have you invested in the past? And, when did you start investing with JWB?
Well, I've been investing for, unfortunately about 40 years, a long time. I started right out of college and invested in stocks, bonds, options. Over the years, I've done those plus, MLPs, REITs, ETFs, warrants. More recently, cryptocurrencies. I've done precious metals. So I've invested a lot of different asset classes over the years. But I have a particular interest in real estate. And actually, I've increased my real estate holdings over the last couple of years, especially in various areas. And that's what brought me to JWB. I made my investments with JWB in the middle of 2021.
So middle of 2021, right? Still, that was during, eviction moratoriums, right? That was, we still had a lot of COVID related question marks out there. And you have a lot of experience in different asset classes. You clearly had other options. What made you change to go more real estate focused in a time where many folks were saying, I would certainly not do that at this point in time? What was it about it for you?
Well, a number of things. One is, the stock market has gone up a lot in the last 10 years, and it may continue to go up, may not. I'm not that great at predicting, but I was a little more nervous that we're closer to highs than lows in the stock market. Secondly, just from an interest rate perspective, I saw interest rates, I thought they were going to trend up, and it turns out I feel that more so now that they're going to be trending up. And I like assets like real estate in an inflationary environment. I think that that's going to maintain its value more so than maybe some other asset classes. So I decided to kind of tilt more toward real estate. And more specifically, even though I'm kind of by nature a conservative person, I decided that I was going to take on some debt in order to do it. Where traditionally I've purchased things more with cash, but I decided to do it more with debt just because I like being able to get money at 3% and to have something appreciate above that. So,
especially in an inflationary environment too, right? You're seeing that literally if you take out debt at 3%, but inflation is 7% or more, you're winning every single time.
Listen, Bob, you asked us a question before the show of like, what is JWB competing with usually when investors are coming over here? What else are they looking at? When you were looking at the stock market and you were looking at these different things, in your head, what was what you placed out of your portfolio with JWB? What was it competing with? What were you looking at?
It was competing against cash or, cash equivalents, which earn you very low returns these days. And it was competing against kind of syndicated real estate deals, which I do own some of those too. But there's pros and cons to each. And I wanted to go toward like specific ownership of houses as in JWB, as opposed to a pooled partnership kind of thing.
And had you ever invested in real estate for purpose of rental properties before?
Yes, I do have some other rental properties. So yes. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to invest this money with JWB is I've had some personal experiences of doing everything myself, buying a house, fixing it up, finding tenants, renting it out, collecting rents, having to fix up the place after it's damaged by the tenants when you try to re-rent it. So I've gone through all that process, and that's what kind of got me interested in JWB as much more of a turnkey solution, kind of a set it, forget it, passive investment, but still getting a lot of the upside of having that asset class.
Love it. Sounds fantastic.
Right on, man. Well, let's test your guest investor chops. As we are whisking away to our property, I want to welcome Carolyn and Karen Moline, the first family of the Not Your Average Investor Show community. Good for you to check in. Thank you very much.
Daughter, right?
Mother and daughter. That's right.
Go.
That's right. And I imagine Ken's in there watching with them as well. But welcome to the show as we magically whisk ourselves away to 8132 No Road, Jacksonville, Florida.
You like that one?
I do like it. It rolls off the tongue. No Road, Jacksonville, Florida, 32210. It is a purchase price of $215,000, a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house with a 2-car garage, estimated lease at $1,300. Let me know in the chat if this is coming in clear. It's a new construction home you see from this picture. I'm reading this out for our friends that listen on the podcast and on the radio. And if you are listening on the podcast or the radio, you should join us live. Go to nyais.com. It's as fun as it sounds. All right. And what people really come to in this asset class in general is this right here, the total monthly cash flow and the total ROI with conventional financing, that monthly cash flow being $100, the total ROI being 8.7%. Greg, what do you love about this house?
Well, I thought you'd never ask.
I almost did it.
I do love about this property is that it has very low property taxes. And this is very common when you have new construction assets. New construction has lower property taxes than homes that were renovated and built a long time ago because building standards have increased and the risk of loss for insurance companies is less if something was just built this year or in the very near past there. And so you're going to have a lower cost to property taxes, which is great because quite frankly, it's harder to make positive cash flow work for new construction. So you need things like lower property taxes in order for this to be an asset that pays you every single month. And so I love that about this property. The other thing I love about this property is that No Road might not sound like the best road to live on. I guarantee you there is a road on No Road. And there's a lot of JWB clients that own properties just like this one in a half-mile radius or a mile radius. So I know, Pablo, we're kind of queuing up the map here,
Just did it.
right?
It's on.
Awesome. Well, so what you're seeing here is
I'll move it up to the screen. You can see it. Here you go, buddy.
even better, right? We're looking at the map of Jacksonville here, and is that yellow or green for that thing?
That's right.
Look at this, right? This is a map of Jacksonville. There's over 2,500 properties that have been purchased by our clients. So you see all of these properties that have been purchased by clients here in Jacksonville, and it's great to see a pattern of success, right? You're not breaking the mold here. You're not working on a new business model with a new company or whatnot. All of these are properties just like Bob owns. And so if you zoom in there right on No Road, right, you're going to see 10, 20, 50 right there in a half-mile radius of everything. So when you're asking about like, how do we know about rent rates? How do we know about how to market your home to make sure that a resident wants to live there? And how do we know that we're going to be able to sign a 2 or a 3 year lease? Well, this is how, because we do the same thing over and over and over again. So 2 reasons why I absolutely love this property here on No Road.
There you go. You can also run to an IHOP and Publix around there. I saw that on the map as well, which is nice.
Well, there you go. Even better.
Bill Shields has a question from something that you asked. And by the way, if you're watching on Facebook, you want to ask a question, go to nyas.com, join us here live. Bill Shields asks, does new construction always have lower taxes or just temporarily until it's reevaluated?
So on that evaluation, you see taxes there on right, like row 26 there, estimated annual property taxes. So in the first year, we're telling Bob that he should expect $3,200 for property taxes. Well, Bob bought in the middle of the year and taxes are actually assessed January 1st of that year. So this is yet another way that we're super conservative with our numbers, right? Bob bought for half the year. His share is that prorated share of the taxes for that year, but it's not of the actual market value of the property, right? It's actually of the lot value, which was the year before. So it's a nice thing for a new construction home. You get a little bit of additional benefit there, right? the end of the day, of course, new construction renovations, you're going to be right in the same return, sphere there, right? 7 to 9%, you're going to be there either way. You're just going to get there differently. You're going to get here on new construction because you've got lower property taxes, maybe a little bit of an extra bump, like Bob pointed out there for the timing of it. Renovations are going to be a little bit different, lower purchase price, but you're going to have higher insurance costs, right? You're going to have higher maintenance costs and vacancy. So you get there at the end of the day.
There you go. And Bob, your takeaway was kind of like, if you have the option to close on December 29th or January 2nd, take January 2nd, right? Because that way you get that assessment.
Exactly. You get a whole year where you're just assessed as vacant land as opposed to a fully, assessed building. So you're going to save 90% of the tax bill, probably.
There you go. A couple $1,000 in your pocket.
Let me give an alternative perspective because, it wouldn't really be about the closing. Sorry, Bob. I just thought of this before when we were talking about this, but I thought about this a little bit more. It's based on the certificate of occupancy. And so it's not necessarily based on the closing date, right? Mm-hmm. So if you could buy a property that had a certificate of occupancy on January 2nd, you would, of course, get a little savings there. But in terms of closing, you actually get a little bit of a savings if you close on December 30th, because you get to write off your closing costs from the previous year, so just a couple of things to throw out there. But yes, it's great. It worked out really great for you because you're going to get lower taxes in your first year than it's on your property evaluation.
Right.
They call him GC because it gets competitive with this.
All these scenarios are running through my head. I'm like, all right, let's think about it from a different angle. Yeah. So there we go.
Got it. Cool. I think we got breaking news. Greg, you got a rental rates update for me?
It's not about rental rates. I do have an estimate or an update on rental rates, but it's not the same one you're thinking about. It was about rent collection.
Rent collection.
Should we talk about rent collection?
That's what I meant to say.
All right. Well, we'll steal the show on rent collection right now because I wanted to throw some props to my team. So our property management team, we just got the numbers back in for January's rent collection, 98.6% rent collected. And, we've been right around there and then we haven't done too many rent collection updates lately. It was the thing to do during COVID time, but it's kind of not something we highlight nearly as much, but we're at 98.25% historically is average rent. So 98.6, when you're thinking about collecting rent on 4,300 rental properties, that 0.4% delta there is actually quite substantial. Yeah. So just super excited. Great thing for everybody in the community, those who are JWB clients, getting more rent than we have in the past even.
Love it. Love it. Back to you, Bob. If we are looking at this cash flow versus this ROI, right? Like before the call, you were kind of telling us a little bit about, you asked us who the typical investor is, and Bob was saying, and Craig was saying, people that are looking for max ROI, and you're like, oh yeah, unlike Ohio, right? Like you know your markets and you know your stuff. How do you consider the difference between cash flow and ROI when you're looking at this stuff? Well,
for me, I'm looking at this as a relatively long-term investment, right? So, whether something comes out to be a 9% ROI or a 6% or a 12%, projection, the projections aren't going to be exact. There's going to be stuff that happens in a market. Some of it's going to be positive, some of it's going to be negative. So, I don't get too fine on those kind of numbers. One of the things I liked about Northern Florida, as opposed to some other, regions that I've looked at or sometimes invested in, is that you have, positive demographic factors that are supporting you. I lived in Illinois for close to 20 years, and Illinois, or at least the area I was living in, is losing population. And that's a big contrast to North Florida, which is gaining, households every week are moving into North Florida. So I like to kind of go with the rising tide to some extent. So that's all I can say on, making those decisions.
I loved what you said earlier too. Like, I don't like to fight demographics, right? Like when the demographics are going in a certain direction, I want to be going along that path, right? That just makes a lot of sense, right?
Right.
I'll give some numbers to highlight what you're talking about as far as population growth. I just recently did a deep dive in the population growth among major cities here in the country and compare that to the total US. And from 2017 to 2019, average growth across the US was 1% growth for population. And Jacksonville's population growth, according to that time, 2017 to 2019, was 3.6%, which is a ton. That's why it's the fifth most fastest growing population in the entire country. But I also pulled stats on Cleveland, right? My longstanding, rivalry with Cleveland football, being a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, I had to pull that. Guess what Cleveland's rate is? Do you remember, Pablo?
It's like -0.4, something like that.
Negative 0.4%.
It's hard to burned in my brain.
Right. That's what I'm trying to do. Right. They beat us in the playoffs last year. So this is what I have to do.
That memory is burned in my brain as well.
So like fighting the demographics, do you want to put your money in a place where population is declining, knowing that population growth or lack thereof significantly affects future rent increases, significantly affects, home price increases? Probably not. Right. It's one of the reasons why we love Jacksonville.
The other thing I might mention to interject is that, in addition to those like kind of macro or regional effects, if you focus too much on just ROI or cash flow and try to maximize that, it might lead you into some neighborhoods you don't want to be in too. Because, I can get a really high ROI in some war zones, but I don't really want to be there. I don't want to be an owner there. So
I'd love to hear more about that. And I guess I'm curious, with your previous investment experience in real estate, was there some pain points there that led you to that?
So I went into a small partnership with a very few other people on the south side of Chicago a number of years ago. And we were in a neighborhood that was not too far from the University of Chicago, which is a fantastic institution, but does have some rough areas around it. And we thought that certain area was going to gentrify and do better. And, so we invested some money there to build some housing, and it was a disaster. So we lost a lot of money. And two like specific things I can mention is I guess I'm a little cynical about this now. We made the decision we weren't going to pay off people. Okay. In terms of, housing code, all those kind of things. Well, it's hard to do business in certain areas of Chicago if you don't. And number two is we actually let a guy stay in one of the units for free if he kind of guarded the property for us. Well, that didn't work out either, because they basically stripped the copper out of some of the units and blah, blah, blah. So, it was a painful experience. So that's kind of my war zone story.
And that's what, I'm sorry that you had to go through that, Bob.
Well, education, you get it one way or the other.
That's the truth, man. People see this shiny object of real estate as far as what the returns can be. And they think, oh, it can be this and it can be that. They get so enamored what your rate of return can be, especially if you use debt, right? You think if it's a no money down deal, your return on investment is infinite, right? Or it can be really high, the less amount of money. And so they get so enthralled with, I can earn 50% returns or 30% returns. But the moment that you have to start getting into making decisions of if you're going to pay off somebody to protect your property and you have to think about your copper being taken, I guarantee you that 30 or 50 or 70% is not worth it at that point, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Interesting, man. Interesting. All right. We got a couple of questions here in the community, and then we're going to dive really deeper into Bob's story. But Bill Shields has a question. How does the ROI look if I hold on to the property long term? That's a great question, Bill, because we haven't done the appreciation rate thing. Bob, do you want to take a shot at explaining the 5 profit centers of rental property investing to pre-frame it for GC over here?
Well, I can get some of them, I'm sure. So, some of it's going to be, cash flow. Some of it might be from paying down the mortgage, having someone else pay down your mortgage, basically. Part of it might be from savings on taxes. You're probably going to depreciate or you could depreciate the property, et cetera. So you get some tax savings. Part of it might be capital appreciation, basically the rising value of the home over time. And
4 out of 5. I love it, Bob.
Yeah, I get an 80. Okay. Help me out here.
The one that you didn't mention here is actually one of the biggest reasons that you decided to get into this asset class: inflation hedging. Well done.
Yeah. Well done, man. Well done. So that being said, you can notice that we don't have appreciation rate here. We have 0%, but if you were to look at a market cycle for over 20 years, right, for 10 to 20 years, full market cycle, the historical average in Jacksonville has been 4.3%. I think it's been updated to 4.6. Are we going with that? I
did this deep dive on all the data. It's actually 4.6% per year on average. And that's from 1982 all the way to present day. So even more real estate cycles. But yeah, 4.6 is the trend line.
All right. So to answer Bill's question, if you hold it on for a full market cycle and you can actually account for appreciation, right? We don't do that in the short term, but we do it in the long term. You put in 4.6% here and you see the returns boom up from 8% to 26%. Bob, do you want to take a shot at explaining that one?
Yeah, I mean, you have a large asset, in this case, $215,000 to start with. And if you appreciate it or increase it by 4.6% compounded every year, that gets to be a pretty big number. I mean, it's compounding interest is a powerful force.
Compounding interest is a powerful force. I think they call it the most powerful force, right, over the long haul. So you're definitely right there.
There you go. All right, we got one more question here I'm putting that back down to 0. So we go back down to those normal numbers there. And Roger Voisnet. Roger, good to have you back on the show, man. Haven't seen you in a while. He says, I have not focused on the end of the 20-year real estate cycle, but thinking ahead, would it best to sell via JWB or look into engaging an independent agent locally to sell to an owner occupant?
Roger, great to have you on the show. Roger's one of our longest time clients, one of our best refers of friends and family. So super happy to have you here, Roger. So a great question here is talking about the best way to liquidate your asset when your 20-year hold is over. You know, there's not a one set answer there. I think the best thing to do is to analyze what the best exit is that time, right? You could make more money by selling to an owner occupant than you could potentially to a turnkey client. If I looked at this, or excuse me, not a turnkey client, an investor. If I looked at this 10 years ago, 5 years ago, I definitely would have said that you could make more money selling to an owner occupant than an investor, because an investor would have bought at a discount. Now I'm not so sure. You know, there's $30 billion coming in from Wall Street to be able to buy these same types of assets. And they're paying more than market value for these assets because they love how this performs in an inflationary period. And it's a better option for where they're putting their dollars. So they're actually paying more.
Interesting.
You know,
yeah.
The other thing to consider for an owner occupant is that you have those 10% of those holding, selling, and closing costs, typically, if you sell to an owner occupant and you work with an agent. So, Roger, you know, you can just talk to our team. If you're ever considering selling, talk to our team. We're going to run through those scenarios with you, right? We're going to say, okay, is it better for you to be able to sell owner occupant for your situation and know that there's going to be some costs coming along with it and you're going to make out better? Well, we're going to refer you to an agent that we trust. It may be the other way, right? It may be more of another investor who might be willing to pay, you know, maybe not pay as much, but you're going to save in cost for the liquidation of it. So long story short, reach out to our team for any client who has a question like that. Reach out to our team. We're going to be your first point of resource, and then we're going to help you and direct you in the best way that you can maximize your return on investment.
There you go. So if you're a client, reach out to your portfolio manager. If you are not a client, you can always join us on the show at nyis.com or chatwithjwb.com. And now, Bob, let's dive deeper into your journey. Denny Davis is already teeing us up here when he has a question for you. He says, Bob, what are your investment goals over the next 5 to 10 years, specifically with JWB?
I put that in the context of my overall investment goals. I mean, JWB is one component of it, and they serve a certain function. So, you know, I would 10 years from now, I hope to be still holding these homes that I've purchased. I will probably have a few more through JWB, and I'm going to hold on to them. And hopefully, you know, they'll be passed on to my kids.
Cool.
It's wonderful. Hear that a lot. The legacy building too. It's a big component that we don't highlight nearly enough.
Yeah. That's a great piece of it. Bob, before you bought a house through a turnkey investing service, right? Whether it's JWB or anybody else, what'd you have to overcome to take that leap of buying it from somebody else and owning them to trust it?
Well, I wanted to do a little bit of research. You know, you have to kind of trust who you're doing business with, you know, and I wanted a firm that would identify the right asset for me, that could manage it properly, that had a team around it, that made it easy for me. Okay. And that's one of the things that led me to JWB. You know, it was a pretty easy thing to do, frankly. I mean, I've done it all myself, you know, for a few houses, and it's hard. It takes a lot of time, you know, and I'm not sure it's worth it for me at this point. I'd rather do things a little more on a passive basis. And so when I started talking to JWB, it was apparent that, you know, they had a ton more data than I did. understood what the rents were going to be, understood what markets to invest in and what not to invest in. I do have some holdings myself. I probably have the rents too low on the stuff that I don't have with JWB that's in North Florida, because I'm not really in tune with what's current. So on the one hand, I maybe save money, on not paying for a management company or blah, 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 but I'm spending that money because I'm taking a lower rent than I could from the tenants. So anyway, in terms of team, JWB said, okay, well, yeah, we have an insurance broker. You can talk to them, lined up that really easily. Okay, yeah, you need some financing. Sure, we can refer you to some mortgage brokers. And, all those kind of ancillary services turned out to be really good choices. I'm going to give you an example. So one of the issues I had with JWB was new construction. I locked in a loan rate, and then the construction period passed by the lock period. So like, oh, great, what's going to happen now? So I talked to the loan broker, the mortgage broker that JWB had recommended, and he tried to negotiate with the lender, and the lender said, no, we're going to bump it by this much. And he went out and got another lender that was able to do it on the original terms. And so I was pretty impressed by the fact that he did that really quickly to line it up for the new completion date. And again, made it pretty easy for me, pretty stress-free.
That's a really cool story, Bob. That's not normal, and that's one of the reasons that we talk about new construction pros and cons. One of the cons with new construction is it's just hard to hit a completion date. And, if you lock your loan too early, you run the risk of losing that lock and then having a higher interest rate later on. So, wow, that's a really great story. That's a great example of our team. Our team internally, obviously, how I feel about our team here, but our external teammates, our legal team, right? The lawyer's office that we work with, which just happens to rent space from JWB. Literally, I could hit him with a football right down the road there, right? We got the Richie Insurance.
Buck Smoke could hit it with a football from much further away. Just letting you know.
It's a good call. Yeah. It's a good call.
From St. Johns County.
Buck Smoke could hit, Bob with, Marietta right here. So, that quality of that, it all comes down to the experience. And, Bob doesn't necessarily care if it's internal teammate, external teammate. They got to be held to that standard so that this is a wonderful experience, and that's ultimately, I think, what speaks Bob's language, because he didn't have a great experience in his past real estate investments. And this one had to be different.
Great, man. Well, we're going to kind of show off your kind of the performance of your portfolio here in the This Is Your Life segment of the Property of the Week. Before we get there, have you had any hiccups? Is there anything that could have gone better? Do you have any kind of feedback where it could have been a little bit better of an experience, or something that you didn't see coming?
Well, one thing that I did was I decided to hire a home inspection firm to come in just to give, because I'm not an expert and I wasn't there. So I hired somebody to come in, and they went through the houses, and, of course, those guys can take a pristine, condition and make it look like it's a 50-page report with 150 things wrong. But they went through the houses and they found that really everything was fine. There were a couple of very minor issues. Oh, tighten this electrical receptacle or whatever. One of them was missing, a kitchen cabinet. I found out, okay, that's on back order. It's going to come later. But some of those things. One thing that was a little bit of a hiccup, although again, it didn't create a lot of stress for me, was literally 4 months after closing, I was looking through some document and something caught my eye. And I found that one of my houses was constructed on a parcel, and there was an adjacent parcel that was vacant. Those two parcels were still on one tax lot. They should have been separated at the time, at the time it was sold to me by JWB, but they weren't. So I was getting a tax bill for my parcel and the adjacent parcel. So I called that. Yeah, you're right. I called that to JWB's attention. They said, oh yeah, they figured out, oh, sorry, so they're still frankly working, I think, with Duval County to make sure it's sorted out during the next, tax cycle or whatever. So, but
interesting.
That's one little hiccup, that it wasn't segmented properly, or I don't know what the proper terminology is, but.
Yeah, that's really good to know. That can happen. When you're splitting lots up, it's, sometimes you can do everything right, but the city doesn't necessarily process the information the right way. I don't mean to pass the buck there. Sometimes we just flat out make mistakes. So did we make you whole on it as far as the tax?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Well, we'll make sure that we do that. If we haven't, of course, that's number one. And then, yeah, that's great feedback. I asked Bob right before the show to make sure that he shared all the good, the bad, the ugly. And so, Bob, thank you so much for sharing things that don't go 100%. Thanks again for sharing your information here with everybody. Bob hasn't actually seen this yet. So thank you again for being courageous. What we're looking at here, Bob, first is, and you may not remember this, but a part of the onboarding process for any new client is that we're going to want to sit down and understand what your goals are. And so we were able to ask you those questions. So one thing that we took from your conversation with my team was that diversification was really important for you. And that was the real reason that you were selecting to, invest with us. Can you talk a little bit about what diversification is going to do for you?
Well, yeah, I just always believe in kind of reducing risks to the extent I can. So I diversify in asset classes. Within asset classes, for real estate, for instance, I diversify geographically. I mean, I have some investments in Florida and some in other states, and some in different types of properties, some residential, some non-residential. So yep. I try to do that because you never know what's going to be hot and what's going to be not. And I'm not good at predicting. So I thought I'd just kind of cover the bases through diversification.
It makes a lot of sense. And the next thing we did, Bob, is we broke that goal that you have down into a monthly passive income number. And then we worked together to establish a $5,000 a month passive income goal through your JWB portfolio, which we broke then down into acquiring a minimum of 6 properties. That all still ring true for you? Does it make sense?
Yes, it does. Mm-hmm.
Love it. So Bob's purchased 3 properties with us so far in just about a half a year of being with JWB. So congratulations on those 3 purchases. Just an incredible time for you to be able to buy rental properties because of a lot of reasons, but definitely the debt that you acquired it with, right? The low interest rates. And so I applaud you for that. And then we established the goal to accomplish that milestone here. So we've got a little bit of time to get those 6 properties if we so choose. And then your date of next purchase, right? It looks like we're targeting May of next year. And then we'll get you closer and closer to that 6 goal. All sound good?
That's right.
All right. So this is just a statement or an overview of what your portfolio has looked like at the time that you purchased it. So Bob, you can see you purchased 3 new construction homes here and you bought them all on the same day in July. So Bob, let me ask you this, right? You hadn't invested with JWB before and you decided to buy 3 at one time. Why'd you do that? I know that you do your due diligence, right? Some might say, well, I might just buy 1 to start out with. Why did you decide to do 3?
I guess I had a certain amount of capital I wanted to deploy. And it's as easy to buy 3 as it is to buy 1, frankly.
It is.
From a time standpoint, it's just, I made a decision, on each of the locations all at one time and, lined up the mortgages all at one time and got the insurance all at one time. And it's just, it's easier.
Makes a ton of sense from an experience perspective. Not enough people give this the credit that it needs to be, right? Like, look at those interest rates that you got, Bob. Right. I mean, incredible, brother.
Should we go to the next slide?
Yep, let's do that.
All right. We're looking at KPIs now. Don't forget to read it out for the folks that are listening on the radio and are on the podcast.
Thank you so much. I love our folks that are listening on radio. We got to make sure that we give them the love that they deserve here. So we're looking at key performance indicators here. So what we're showing here is that Bob's lifetime return on investment is 9.74%. And that lifetime return does not include home price appreciation. We'll get into more to that in just a second here. He's been investing for 0.5 years. Literally, you guys just saw that he invested. His first properties were purchased in July of 2021. His lifetime net rental income is $369, which is great that it's positive. Of course, it's going to be relatively low because he's only been investing for, 6-7 months by the time that this reporting was done. But his lifetime total return is $6,623. Again, that does not include home price appreciation. Bob, you want to take a stab at why that lifetime total return number is so much more than the net rental income number?
Maybe principal pay down?
Yeah, exactly. Principal pay down and tax savings. If you're not paying attention to things other than cash flow, you're missing a big component of why you're investing in this asset class, right? Roughly $6,300 of his total return is things not named cash flow.
It's a big deal.
Which is really, really cool.
Yep. Keep going.
Keep going.
All right. Just got to talk to me, buddy.
All right. So, when you were prepping me for that beep, 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 beep,
yeah,
for rent increases. All right. I did a little extra research on Bob's portfolio because I'm looking at his returns and we're crushing it right off the bat. And typically in a client portfolio, it takes a little bit of time for you to reach your goals because you've got fees up front. You've got tenant placement fees up front, which immediately, right, you're going to have a resident in there. So it's good to have a resident in there, but that's going to make it harder for you to be right at expectations right off the bat. But you're going to see here that we're right at expectations for Bob. And so I'm like, well, how are we doing this? And so the first thing that I went to go and look at is, what did we tell Bob his expected rents were going to be on his evaluations, and what were they actually rented for? Which is really, really cool. So Bob, not sure, are you familiar that we over rented all 3 of your properties?
I like it.
I love the passive nature of Bob's approach, right? This is fantastic, right? This is the way it's supposed to be. Like, pleasantly surprised is how I want all of our clients to be.
It's great.
So on Superior Street, the evaluation that, like, we just saw the evaluation here on No Road. Well, this one on Superior said 1125, and when the actual lease was signed for a 2 or a 3 year lease, it was 1150. Right? So additional cash flow of $300 a year, right there. Right? 8102 Eaton Avenue, we said 1250. The actual rent on that one came in at $1331 a month. Really cool. Almost $1,000 of annual cash flow. And for Cheryland Avenue, original expected evaluation rent was $1275. Actual current rent right now is $1298 for almost $300 in annual cash flow. You add all 3 of those up, and that's an additional $1,548 of annual cash flow that goes straight to the bottom line for Bob. And that's why we are at the point that we're performing so quickly for Bob's portfolio. Is that pretty cool?
That's pretty cool, man.
Yeah. Another thing to keep in mind is, like, a $1,500 annual cash flow number is huge when we're talking about expected total monthly cash flow and expected return on investment. Because if you guys remember what we just talked about for No Road, it was $100 a month, right? That's $1,200 a year.
Yeah.
Right. Like, if JWB wanted to be super aggressive on what we absolutely thought we could get for rent, I could easily put every one of these evaluations here at 10%, 12% returns, 13% returns. But this is going to our core values of under promise and over deliver, setting up Bob for success, and, hopefully helping him get his goals even quicker. So pretty cool. All right, Bob, next up, I wanted to show people the highs and the lows of your portfolio. We do this with all of our guest investors. And the property on the top here in Superior is your highest performing property. And you're at 10.5%, which is great. Your expected annualized returns there were 9.42%. So if we were talking about earlier in the show, we were talking about how Bob's evaluations compared to the property on No Road. No Road's expected returns 8.7. Bob's was 9.4, right in the ballpark there, just like he said there. And then the lowest performer is at 8517 Cheryland, and that's at 8.95%. The expected annualized returns are 9.3%. Knowing what we just talked about on the previous slide, right? Makes sense that Cheryland had a $23 a month increase, whereas Superior had a much higher increase of the rent rate, and that's why it's overperformed. So pretty cool to connect the dots on all of this.
All right, cool. Right on, man. And you keep talking about this. These are portfolio review, right? So like you look at this as how everything is performing together, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's critical, right? And I can tell Bob, just from our chat so far, that you think like an asset manager when you're thinking about where your money is going. You've got different asset classes, right? And you're thinking about what's going to perform overall the best to give you the best risk adjusted returns. In rental properties, many people fall in love with one rental property, or they fall out of love with one rental property specifically because of what one property does in the short run. And that's really limiting your ability to make sound financial decisions in rental properties, because I know how it goes, right? The longer you own rental properties, something bad is going to happen in that rental property, right? You're going to have an eviction eventually. If you own hundreds of rental properties like I do, I definitely have had evictions, right? If you hold them for 10 to 20 years, like I recommend, you're going to have bad things that are going to happen. You're going to think a lot more about the bad things, and you're going to forget the 3, 4, 5, 6 year residence days where they paid on time and you got above your expected rent, right? You're just going to forget about that. So what you have to do is to look at this as an entire portfolio. And that's what this total portfolio lifetime return on investment allows you to do. This, again, is something we report on for all clients every single month. And it takes every single property that Bob has, or every single client property that we have, and then we look at the weighted average total portfolio. And this is really our scorecard, right? We're thinking about how are we doing for our client. If we're way over for one property and we're way under for one property, but overall our total portfolio is right at expectations, that's a win. Our job here is to perform on a portfolio basis for clients, and having that mindset allows us to be able to work with clients that get it, right? And allow us to serve us in the capacity that we can do.
There you go. All right. So, and all this stuff, GC, this is, if Bob chooses to, he can see it in his client ROI report, right? But this next slide this is the cherry on top of the cake here for you, Bob. This is the GC extra work that he put in just for you, man. Talk to us.
Well, and I love showing the 5 profit centers. I think so much of what our message is on the show, especially on the property of the week, is to help people see beyond just cash flows, right? If all you did was look at cash flows, I don't think rental property investing is the best asset class to invest in. If all you looked at was cash flows, there are other asset classes that are better, right? But the reality is that there's 4 additional profit centers that we look at. And when you combine all 5 profit centers, this is the best risk-adjusted return, in my professional opinion here. And so I wanted to shed some light on all 5 profit centers for Bob with your portfolio. And here you can see the net rental income, like we talked about earlier, is $369 for his half a year of ownership. The big thing there is that it's positive. That's a win for us, right? It's not going to change Bob's life if that was $500 or $200, right? It's just positive, and that's the key. Next, we're looking at tax savings, $2,428 in tax savings, taxes that Bob doesn't have to pay because he's investing in rental properties versus another asset class where you don't get these same tax advantages. Principal paydown is $3,826. Bob, can you talk a little bit about how much you love principal paydown? I know you mentioned it earlier. Tell folks what principal paydown is and why you love it.
Well, basically, you're having someone else pay your mortgage for you, over time. And it's fantastic. You just see your equity grows at an increasing rate, actually, because in the early years of a loan, you're paying mostly interest. And then as you get into it more and, years 5, 10, 15 down the road, if you hold it that long, they're really paying down your principal at an accelerated rate.
Exactly. Right. How cool is it, number one, that somebody's paying your loan off for you? But what Bob's talking about is this profit center gets better with time, which all of these profit centers get better with time. And so it's really wonderful. What Bob's also talking about is even if the house doesn't appreciate, you win as your resident pays your loan down for you. You gain equity that way, which is really, really cool. And a great segue into talking about home price appreciation. Bob, you bought at an incredible time, right? For those who are thinking about buying right now, this still is an incredible time. I've never been more sure that home prices are going to rise over the next year than I am right now, right? It's because, quite simply, supply is really low, demand is still high, and they can't build homes fast enough to make this an equilibrium market. So you're going to see home prices rise. It's very, very confident that's going to happen. And Bob, for you, you bought at the right time too, right? You bought at an incredible time in the middle of 2021. And so while the overall Jacksonville market has appreciated between 15 to 20% year over year, you've owned it for half the year. So that appreciation on your 3 rental properties has gained you $50,900 in equity right off the bat. How cool is that?
It's a good start.
It's a good start. It's about the best start. When I started to invest in rental properties, I did not start out with that start. So I'm super happy for you. And then the last profit center is inflation hedging. And inflation hedging is something that is a little bit more complicated to talk through, but I don't want to gloss over it. I think it's a really important teaching moment for us to understand how impactful it is to be holding hard assets and taking out debt in an inflationary environment. It's hard to calculate what the savings is here or the profit center return is here. Inflation hedging means that your rents are going up as the cost of goods and services go up. And it's showing in that home price appreciation number because the cost of houses go up as inflation happens. But what many people don't understand is that it also becomes easier and easier for you to pay down your loan. You're kind of riding the wave of inflation. It becomes easier and easier for you to pay down your loan when you have smart debt in place and inflation is happening around you. Because what's actually happening is we are all taking home more money in inflationary times. The problem is that all of our cost of goods and services around us are going up as well. That's why people don't like inflation. But how cool would it be, Bob? How cool would it be if you could just bring home more money just because that's the wave you're riding, which is inflation, but you could hold one of your costs to be fixed for the next 30 years.
Right.
Be super,
It's a
super
better
cool.
time to be a borrower than a lender, in my humble opinion.
100%, because you as the borrower, you are paying down your loan with less valuable dollars in the future. And so the easiest way, the way the government tracks inflation, is through the consumer price index. And we think inflation is actually much higher than 7%. But when Bob is borrowing money at 3% rates and everything else is going up at 7%, he's immediately making money because he's paying that loan down in less valuable dollars. It's easier and easier to pay loans down, especially when you're holding a hard asset and inflation is going on. And so hopefully we can all keep talking about that concept, because that's why smart debt has never been more important than it is right now.
Bob, as you just listened to him go off for like 50 minutes analyzing your portfolio, what's going on through your head?
Oh, too bad I didn't buy 3 more.
It was a good time for you, but it's still a good time. So we can help you out with that.
It is. No, it is. I think it is still a good time. I am still bullish on real estate, especially in North Florida. And just as you indicated before, I think supply and demand forces are going to continue for some time to come. So it all bodes well.
Bob, have you got a friend that is telling you, hey man, I'm thinking about getting into real estate, or I'm thinking about putting some money somewhere? What's your advice to a lesser educated version of you that's looking to get started, or kind of start to grow a portfolio, kind of like you've been able to?
First of all, make sure you have everything else in your life set. I mean, don't overextend to get into real estate, So,
Agreed.
Work within your means, have a plan for doing it, but do it. Because I think if you do hold over a cycle, you're going to make money. It'll be a prudent investment. I mean, it has in the past anyway. So, and this applies not just to real estate, but to many investments, the sooner you can do it, the better. I mean, time is on your side. If you can invest when you're 20, 25, 30 years old, you have a very long span. Those assets can appreciate. So if you can do it early, it's a great time.
It's great advice.
Agreed.
Great advice. Bob, thanks for being here, man. I know we went a little bit over today. Thanks for making time for us. This was really, really great. You clearly know what you're talking about. By the way, first, it's Bob's first time ever getting interviewed. You're a pro, right? Like, you were great.
Agreed,
we threw some curveballs at you, man. You were patient with your answer. You delivered well. You stayed in your zone of genius. Really, really well done, man. So I appreciate your contribution to the show.
Thanks very much. It was fun. Thanks.
Yeah, man. No, thanks. It was you made it fun for us, and want to thank the members of our community for making it fun as well. Right, like we're an hour and 10 minutes in, we still got 37 people with us, Bob, which means that you're an interesting man. They're sticking around here listening to you speak. So we couldn't do the show without you. We don't take for granted the fact that this is the middle of a workday and you're spending an hour with us, and we really, really appreciate that. Again, if you want some personalized advice on owning rental properties, the Jacksonville market, or rental property management, go to chatwithjwb.com. Next week, we've got a guest that I'm super, super excited about. It's this guy, Brian Hanley, who started this company called Bullish Media. It's the new media education for future generations, right? Like, he saw a gap in how people are talking about financial education that nobody is serving, and has completely started a new, very like tech-focused, media-focused way of delivering information. We're going to talk about the future of tech and media for investors and investing. Fascinating dude, really fast talker, kind of a wild card. We're going to see what happens.
Love it. Can't wait. Everything you just said there, I'm like, can I be a client like right now for Bullish right now? Because I'm just super excited to hear what he's saying.
I'm trying to figure out what he's doing, right? Like, I think the guy's a genius. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And GC, I'll let you take us away, man.
Bob, just really wonderful to hear your story. Thank you so much, first and foremost, for your trust, for allowing my team to serve you and to help you accomplish those goals that you shared with us. It's the highlight of what we do, is when we get to work with clients just like you. So I appreciate that. And I appreciate you for being here and being courageous and being on the show. There's nothing like learning through your words and your lens and your perspective. So we just appreciate you so much.
It was fun. Thanks a lot.
All right. Till next time, do not be an average investor.